Great to have you back. You're still watching the morning show here on the Rise News. I'm Adesoa Moran.
And I'm Rufai Osedi.
And I'm Shaitan Tigari.
Right, in spite of the bilateral talks that comes Xenophobia in South Africa, held in the South African capital, and during the 7th Tokyo International Conference for Africa, TICAD-7 in Yokohama, Japan, by President Muhammadu Buhari and South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, the xenophobic threat to the lives of Nigerians living in South Africa has yet taken another dimension towards the consistent looting of stores owned by Nigerians.
Well, it will be recalled that the two presidents met in Japan during the TICAD, as we've just said, and did answer questions from journalists concerning the strained relationship between the two countries and the curbing of xenophobia in the country.
Also discussed were issues relating to the well-being of their citizens and ways to further strengthen trade relations between the two largest African economies. It is also on record that over 120 Nigerians had so far been reported killed and their businesses destroyed on xenophobic attacks across South Africa over the years. Joining us now for a chat on this latest xenophobic development is Brian Ebden, a South African creative consultant. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, Brian, what is happening? Well, you came here, when you came here last, and we talked about a lot of things in South Africa, and you said, oh, Nigerians are so gifted, Nigerians are everything, and South Africans should respect us more. But this is happening again, Brian. What is happening? What is happening?
First of all, before we go into the detail of this, I would like to, on behalf of my people in South Africa, deeply apologize. It is shameful, it is unacceptable, and it deserves to be condemned with contempt, what is happening in South Africa. But however, I just would like to deal with a few elephants in the room. But the most important thing, I think, we're moving forward, we need to call what is happening in South Africa what it is. It's not xenophobia. So I think it's very unfair and unfortunate that it's been constantly referred to as xenophobia. South Africa's got an immigrant population of 2.6 million people, which is 5% of the population. They're Chinese. The largest community is Chinese. There's 1 million Indians. There are Moroccans, a large community of Moroccans. There are Romanians. There are Japanese. There are all kinds. And then, of course, 8.7% of the population are white, or descendants of colonizers who are still in South Africa right now. Now, if Chinese people are being killed, if Romanians are being killed, if Moroccans are being killed, then we call it xenophobia. Because the terminology xenophobia implies fear or phobia of foreign people. It's not xenophobia, please, and we need to call it what it is. It's Afrophobia. It is deep-seated self-hate of fellow Africans. Africans are being killed. Have you seen a report of Chinese people being killed? Have we seen a report of Moroccans being killed? We haven't. So it's Afrophobia. So we just need to just move that out of the way that is Afrophobic in the extreme. So having said that, there's a couple of elephants in the room that we need to deal with. The first thing is, last year, 20,336 people were murdered in homicidal attacks in South Africa. The highest for a country that's not at war. It's higher than Afghanistan's homicide rate. Afghanistan, as we know, is at war. It's slightly less than Yemen. It's on the same level as South Sudan. Other countries, let's take Nigeria for example. Massively under-policed. Got 365,000 police in Nigeria for 200 million people. Your homicide rate is 9.86 per 100,000. 9.86 people per 100,000. South Africa is 36. Almost more than 3.5 times more the homicide rate of Nigeria. You had more than 120. Let's look at the numbers. You had 120 Nigerians being murdered over let's say the last 10 years, as an example. Even if you look at the ratio of Nigerians east to everybody else, everybody's being murdered. In Cape Town alone last week, 47 people were murdered. In one city, smaller than PH, 47. One has to ask oneself, what is the underlying reasons that people are being murdered in South Africa? We can't just symptomatically say, well, Nigerians are being targeted. What are the underlying reasons for these homicides? But I think what we need to do is first look at it from, not from a myopic point of view, but from a different perspective. Let's look at South Africa first of all. And at this juncture, I would like to say, and a lot of South Africans don't know this, and I think just to reiterate what the professor, your earlier speaker, said, albeit, I mean, he came from a different tangent. Nigeria played a significant role in the anti-apartheid movement of South Africa, in the liberation of South Africa, not only with the ANC, with the PAC as well as Black Consciousness Movement of South Africa, with Chichi Mashinini, lived in 1005 on Bar Beach. Thank you very much. Thabo Mbeki.
Even the likes of Thabo Mbeki lived in 1004.
Thabo Mbeki lived there. Herbert, Brayu Masakela lived here. Maria Makeba lived here. We had many people who I know personally during the struggle years lived in South Africa. Were sent to OAU, were sent to Unibel, were sent to Benin City, was sent to Poland, was sent to flight school, etc., etc., etc. So other than the schoolboy tax, etc., etc., Nigeria, as a particular country, in my opinion, and based on what I understand, played the biggest role in forcing the hand of apartheid regime to be able to accept a settlement. So now we come to the settlement. And that's very important that we can look at this again from a holistic point of view. Post-94, the euphoria, oh, we're free, blah, 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 etc., etc., etc. We must understand that 9% of the population in South Africa, then, I'm talking 94, controlled 96% of the economy of South Africa, owned more than 90% of the land, owned the means of production, owned access to, willy-nilly, all of the resources of South Africa. Let's talk about the resources very quickly, and I'll come back to this point. If you take all the gold on planet Earth, all the gold, and put it into one cube, one mine in South Africa, Western Deep Levels supplied 50% of all their gold, one mine. Forget the other 300-odd mines. South Africa owns 87% of the platinum reserves. I want you to understand where this is coming from now. Between South Africa and Nigeria own 99% of the world's ferrochrome reserves, South Africa owning 89% of it. So here you have massive resources. Let's not talk about the 40.5 million carats of diamonds that was pulled out of South Africa, stolen.
By De Beers?
Well, call them who you wish.
Ancestral roads?
Thank you. So what you have in South Africa, and if you go to DRC, you ask yourself, why is there conflict in DRC? Why is there conflict in DRC? Come and tell me. So because of the resources, African resources that are being stolen, and therefore they have to inject into that society uncertainty, destabilization. Same with Nigeria.
I hear you talk about the underlying factors, the economy.
I'm not done though.
I know, just to make this conversation also that it's a two-way street. I really want to know, because you're South African, how would you describe the attitude of an ordinary South African to work or labor? And I'm asking this because at the fulcrum of this is South Africans alleging that immigrants are taking their jobs. But when you look at these jobs they talk about, they are the menial jobs, the odd jobs. How would you describe the attitude of South African to work?
No problem. So I'm going to flip this again back to 94. The most popular, single popular black person or African in South Africa, 94 all the way up to 2000, was a man by the name of Professor Kolo Omatoso, who was Nigerian. Yeah. He was Mr. Other than Mandela, of course. He was Mr. Vodacom, massively popular. His son, even up to today, is still one of the most famous film producers in South Africa. There are Nigerians who are doctors and nurses and surgeons and dentists, lawyers, etc., etc., etc. There are 30,000 registered Nigerians in South Africa. The Nigerian Union of NUSA claims there's more than 800,000 card-carrying members in South Africa. That's okay. I had a discussion last week on Wednesday night with a group of South Africans, business venture that came to Nigeria. And I said to them, we have not done well with our African brothers and sisters in terms of South Africa. Apart from the fact that 30%, we have an unemployment rate of 30% in South Africa. Massive squalor, massive squalor. South Africa is the most unequal society on planet Earth. Okay, so here you got black people, and the problem, but let me first deal with this. So you have Zimbabweans who were forced over the border for a number of reasons. Zimbabweans, Tanzanians, Malawians, Botswana, people from Botswana, South Africa anyway, who come to South Africa and prepare to do menial jobs. Because white business owners, because 90% of the economy is owned by white people, let's be honest about that, say, I'd rather give my job to a foreigner who has got no labor, no unions, no protection, no civil protection, no government protection. And I can pay him half the salary I would pay a local South African.
And they'll get the job done.
And they'll get the job done. So that's one. Nigerians, however, coming back to your point of view, Nigerians come there with doctorates, master's degrees, university education. Are they going to park cars? Are they going to snip lawns? They're not going to do that. They want to have a proper job because, for obvious reasons, in our opinion, that Africa's borders should be free. In other words, there should be free movement of people across these so-called enforced borders, which never was there before. So they come there and they say, I'm not going to park a car. I'm not going to cut a fence. I've got a degree. For crying out loud, what must I do this for? So ultimately, they're forced into this vacuum that is being created falsely by what we refer to in South Africa as white minority capital. They've created this false situation in South Africa of hopelessness. And when Nigerians, unfortunately, refer to South Africans as magas, as mumus, as lazy, South Africans are not lazy. South Africans are not lazy. We are famous, infamous for being hard workers. Go to England and you'll see who the top. If you walk into a job and there's a South African and anybody else, 20 people they will choose a South African first. Because South Africans are incredibly hardworking. Anybody that's worked with me,
but a lot of people will argue with you and say that's not true any longer. I mean, that was back in the colonial days. No, that was when they were around Witwatersrand. But difference is the case now. A lot of people's perception of an average black South African now, before I understand we might be going to a break soon, is the fact that I wake up in the morning, sit down with a clear glass of nkomboti. And have nkomboti without working and just laze away the day.
We'll come back
we'll come back and talk more about this when we come back after this quick commercial break. Good, interesting conversations right here, isn't it?
Yes, behind the scenes. Brian Ebden, a South African and creative consultant, is still with us. Rufai, you had that question buttressing the attitude of the South Africans to work. The work they are complaining that the migrants and the refugees are taken from them, including Nigerians, Zimbabweans, Tanzanians, and all of that. Yeah,
and we said an average Nigerian is hardworking, but an average South African will always remind you of, what happened to us. Where an average black South African will always remind you of what happened to us. And the attitude to work is so laser-faced that, wake up in the morning, a little bit of nkomboti in the system and things like that. And, but that's the mindset. So they say, what are they really doing? They want the sharp life. They want to be able to jack the Volkswagen car.
No,
I don't know what South Africans have with Volkswagen anyway.
Yeah, of course.
Love Volkswagen so much.
I think what you're saying is partly true or partially true. This is the fact that we need to focus on. 1994 was the changeover from one evil, racist apartheid state to a democratic, free, liberated state. The land of South Africa belongs to black people. It is irreconcilable. It is no argument about it. Black people were under the impression as a collective that the land would be given back, and its resources, of course, given back to black people. So black people, rightly or wrongly, and I'm not sitting in judgment of it, believe that they are entitled to what white people stole while sipping their gin and everybody else was working in the field. Black people know that South Africa has made trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. I've argued for the past 15 years that South Africa since 1881 has been the richest country on planet Earth. You cannot tell me that a single country that can produce 50% of all the gold on planet Earth, 80% at one stage of all the diamonds, 87% of all the platinum, 89% of all the ferrochrome reserves can be a poor.
But Brian, a lot of people
be a poor country.
But a lot of people argue with you and saying it's because the likes of Cecil Rhodes and Benny Betano could tap those gold and those minerals. But now that the country has been returned to the black people, what have they done with it? Some people will even further argue with you that look at the movement by Julius Malema now, give us back our land and things like that. And they'll tell you, look just across the border. When they took those lands from the white farmers in Zimbabwe and they gave them to the blacks, what became of Zimbabwe? Zimbabwe used to be the breadbasket of Africa before.
Okay.
But see what has become of Zimbabwe now.
Point, counterpoint. I don't have a problem with what you're saying. First of all, nobody deserves the right to prescribe to people what you do with your land. If the land belongs to me, if I want to make a little hole in the land and pour water in it, I'm free to do that. You do not reserve the right to tell me that if black are being given their land back, the land being returned to Africans, that there has to be a prescription. You have to be a farmer. You have to be a miner. No. That's unacceptable.
But it has to work the economy.
No, hold on.
The problem is
before we go there, nobody's going to sit there and look at a pot of gold and just keep staring at it. So hold on. I think the most important thing is that, yes, there's a problematic throwback from the entitlement. In other words, we're entitled to this. And that has rendered the vast majority of black people, who by and large every single day of their lives has to look at white people who are living in the lap of luxury, who have been advantaged at the disadvantage of the majority of people for more than 300 years, has gotten a privilege. You know, the quality of white people in South Africa, the average white person in South Africa, is equal to that of Monaco, is equal to that of Nice, is equal to that of Switzerland. And black people have to interface with this all day long, understanding that this is a crime. That is criminal what white people have done to us in South Africa. That is the reality. And this, unfortunately, the throwback, and that's very unfortunate, the throwback has been entitlement. So here we sit, the attitude. Here we sit. This has now created a vacuum. And the vacuum means, let's deal with the other two elephants in the room. There's an elephant in the room. A few weeks ago, a young boy from Imo State was captured by the police. He was handcuffed. Plastic bag was put over his head. Tear gas was inserted into the plastic bag. The boy died. His brother, quote unquote, comes onto television and says, yeah, well, he's a drug dealer, so he normally gives the police the money. But this morning, he didn't have money. He told the police, come back later, I will dash you. The police said, we're not interested, we want the money now. So they murdered him. Later on, 500 so-called brothers of his came and started fighting with the police because of the death of this guy. And this is not the first person that's been killed by the police. So let's talk about the South African police. And very, very important.
Very crucial.
On planet Earth. Why do I say that? If you go to the Philippines and juxtapose the Philippines' extrajudicial killings of only 1,000 people over the last 5 years, South Africa has killed over the last 24 years, has killed more than 20,000 black males in particular, of which more than 52% has been murdered in captivity. So here you go and you cry about, and we had this discussion before, you cry about Nigerian police killing 1 or 2, SARS killing 1 or 2 or 3 people. Last year, 779 black South Africans were murdered by the police in extrajudicial killing, the highest in the world, by far. Of that, 50.7% was killed while in captivity. So here you have, in the one hand, you have massive poverty, massive unemployment, massive zero hope. The average black person in South Africa, I'm talking about South Africa, doesn't see any hope for any future whatsoever. It is a complete state of hopelessness, helplessness. Injected into this, you have, and I've argued this point, and I've argued this point vociferously. Do Nigerians manufacture drugs? No. Do they manufacture heroin? No. Do they manufacture methamphetamine? Now, while we talk about methamphetamine, do you know that in the Western Cape, in Cape Town alone, 25% of all teenagers from the age of 11 to 18 are strung out on methamphetamine, the highest in the world. Who produces that? Nigeria. We know Nigerians are part of who are selling the drugs, but who produces? The Chinese, who produce the ethanol, the ethanol, which is the active ingredient of methamphetamine. Nothing happens to the Chinese. Who produces heroin? Heroin comes out of Afghanistan.
So you're saying most of these Nigerians that have been murdered are drug dealers?
But I'm coming to my point. Who produces cocaine? Do Nigerians produce cocaine? Nigerians don't. The cocaine is distributed between South Americans and European cartels, particularly, and then it routes through Morocco. So my argument is, yes, there are a portion of Nigerians who are engaged in criminal activity. Let's be honest about that. But there are South Africans too. There are Moroccans, there are Tanzanians, there are Zimbabweans. So why don't we run around and then kill everybody instead of blaming one group? That is where the shamefulness comes in. That is where the shamefulness, because Nigerians have become a target. So if there's a problem, let's just blame, you understand, so there's a perception. Let's just blame Nigerians, because Nigerians are easy to blame. Nigerians, on the other hand, are more vociferous, are more vocal about it than anybody else. And I'll tell you why. Because Nigerians, like all other criminal, I'm not saying all Nigerians, I'm saying a portion of those who engage in criminal activity, have the police in the payroll. So when the police are not protecting, they're complaining. Let me explain to you again. Last year, 779 black men were murdered by the police in extrajudicial killings. In South Africa, you can't touch a policeman. They will shoot you dead on the spot. Nigerians were punching these guys, pushing them around.
Because
because they're on the payroll.
Soon. Let's look at the connection between politics and what you now term Afrophobia and not xenophobia in South Africa. Would you say, and do you agree, that the political class in South Africa is complicit in these attacks?
The political class in South Africa, the ANC government and the president in particular, are massively to blame for this. And I'll tell you why they're to blame. Because when there was a downing of tools in 2012 in Marikana, at Lonman, the president, who at that time ordered and instructed the police to murder 34 people, and 34 people were murdered on the spot. Are you telling me that the same enforcement cannot be enacted and ordered to go and deal with the issue there? This is my point, that there's underlying forces acting on a diversionary tactic. What is that diversionary tactic? Black people are demanding, it's been 24 years, we want our land back. White people are saying, you are not going to get your land back. You have to pay, you have to buy the land from me, which I stole. As ludicrous as it is. As ludicrous as it is. Let's look at businesses in Nigeria, shall we? South African companies. MTN owned by who? White people. ShopRite owned by who? Wow. White people. DSTV owned by who? White people. Stanbic IBTC owned by who? Not black people.
So
owned by white people.
As we start to wrap up, really, just one word. In fact, I hear we don't have more time for this. In fact, we just need to wrap up now because I hear we don't have more time for this. But thank you so much, Brian, for being here. We'll definitely still bring you back and talk about
No problem at all.
But maybe when we bring you back, we want to start talking solutions and stop all of this. That brings us to the end of the show today. Thank you so much, Brian, for being here. Really appreciate you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm Rifai Hussaini.
I'm Adeso Almoran.
And I'm Shaitu Atigari. This is Horizon.